some of you think I am difficult on you. Well, it's a perception. You certainly did not have my two masters. Okay? If someone was talking at the moment that he sat on the chair and appeared to be starting teaching, an elder would come, take the person, take him out. If you don't want the wisdom, get out. So sometimes I say, okay, we're back, we're going to keep teaching. And you need, as an ego, to finish that last 25 seconds of conversation. Go and miss out on the entire wisdom. But I'm not throwing you out. I'm just telling you, look. This is not a cafeteria. It's a temple. It simply appears to be just a room. In a hotel somewhere, it's a temple. Okay? The respect we have for the sacred art. Now, it doesn't mean you have absolutely to shut up if you have a requirement, if something hurts, if you have an authentic need, don't suffer about it. But everything that is just childish, try to stop it. Okay? Thank you, because there is respect. Now, of course, a reflex that we have developed in the Brahmanical way where I thought is the moment you get in the temple, there's not a single word that you utter, regardless of how you felt. And at one point, I sat up. I was sitting, I got up. You know, there's French-English translation sometimes confuse me. So, and I went to the bathroom because the master had been teaching for an hour and 50 minutes or something, and I couldn't hold on because they asked me to do stuff to help, so I didn't go to the bathroom. It was difficult for me at that time. I had not mastered the art of observing something painful for so long. I just said, well, I can't do it anymore, so I'm just going to go. So when I got back, we received a sermon about the lack of passion everyone had, because one person in a state of suffering had to go to the bathroom. And they took the video of that wisdom, that 3-hour spot, and they replayed it on the TV. You know, there comes a point, I understand the Brahmanical way, I understand it. And it is through this system I learned, if we were in India, in that culture, in that system, we might want to act this way. Now I'm telling you, please do an effort on your own without having me to pretend I'm scolding you, to develop a sense of the sacred. Who has not saluted the altar? Don't raise your hands, just look at yourself. Who has not saluted the altar? You go, oh, they set up an altar. Hey, did you know what I did yesterday? You know, who went? Just a salute, just a bow, an appreciation. And you know how I teach. If it's not in your system of belief, don't do it. It's okay. But for all of you for which it is a system of belief, to refresh the sense of gratitude for their guidance, and use the physical symbolism as a means to concentrate on what they really are. Of course, there's a teaching about it might be an idol, you might be looking at a statue. Well, if God is in everything, it's in that statue. Bow. Salute, okay? And love it. And if we break the statue, we didn't break God, because it's just a statue, okay? Your ego will use it to confuse you and get you in a state of cult. But it doesn't change anything about the fact that I wish you to develop the sense of what is sacred. The sense of what is sacred in a temple is what will show you, will train you at the level of ego to be able to recognize what is sacred in everything. If you can't do it here, forget it doing with your boss who's scolding you. You understand? So try to have this sense of sacred. I'm not a scolding type. I'm a type of, I'm going to use everything to teach you. If you want to finish your phrase, go out and miss the entire teaching. Because I don't want you to disturb us when you want to come back. And you're humans, and if you need to go to the bathroom and not calling a break, and you reach that point, if it's just slightly uncomfortable, hold it. If you reach the point of discomfort, that it could become irritating, silently go. I'm going to use this to teach everyone else. Look how little focus you have to be able to look at the person going to pee. Stay here, you know? It's okay. I'm going to use this as a teaching. But if you think that I'm difficult by asking you to shut up when it's time to shut up, if you think I'm difficult by sometimes challenging you, you have no idea of the pure Brahmanical way. You have no idea. When the masters have permission in their country to beat up physically the disciples because they didn't take the time to look at themselves. The worst thing is they don't teach the people to look at themselves. They say, as they build up suffering, they'll have no more choice. It'll be too obvious and they'll learn from that. Okay? I'm the guy who brought the wisdom of integration. I'm not the guy who invented we had to look at ourselves. It's been the truth since the beginning of time. The structure and how to organize it the way I did, that helps you evolve so fast. I never learned that. Okay? It was taught to me in a way that was meant to keep us still in a state of fear of the Guru's authority. Until we discovered the Guru had no authority. And when I was asked in front of everyone to undress myself completely naked, I didn't argue, I just did it. And I never asked any one of you to do that. Because it is not our path. It is not how I want to teach it. It's not our culture. And the reason why I don't have to do this is I give you these lectures on your attempts at sabotaging the wisdom. Because you don't have a sense of what is sacred. Okay? Breathe. Now I'm playing with this even deeper. I just gave a teaching about your fear of screwing up. What is your reaction towards the sacred sense I just spoke about? You have the feeling of screwing up? Breathe. Look at it. It's a teaching, all right? From my experience, I feel that you have enough suffering from your own life experience. It's not required for the master to produce that. Unless you specifically ask the master for an accelerated experience. Then again, the master is supposed to know how to modulate that speed. As opposed to some Brahmans with such level of compassion that can measure that speed that you can handle. And other Brahmans that would just go, he wants to go fast. He duct tape both of your feet on the gas pedal, bolts it on the ground, and there's no way to stop, and you go through hell. That is not self-love, from my experience, to push you beyond your limits. Unless there's a very sacred sense in the terrible dharma that sometimes we go through. It's okay. So all of this teaching about the sacred sense is essential for you to be able to apply the wisdom we just went through just last hour. We're trying to identify what the ego does to sabotage the spiritual experience. So I have to tell you about it. I have to point to you, look at this, look at this, look at that. So you can use tools to observe yourself. Okay? The worst thing about this all is your ego trying to understand, and it's normal. Your mind was meant to try to understand. So don't judge it when it's not possible to understand. I'll give you wisdom from one side of the medal. You'll use that wisdom to go into the contrary other side of the medal, which is also ego, so I can show you that side too. Okay? If I tell you, look left, you look left, and you use looking left to discard looking right. You say, well, look right. So, it's about broadening your perception, all right. One thing at a time. Stepping stones, you know. I'd like you to contemplate. Do you know what is sacred? And for whatever interpretation you have of what is sacred, it's okay. It has to be something sacred. Regardless of how deep you can go and how wise you are about the sense of what is sacred, for what you know is sacred, do you really apply it? Do you make an effort? You need to look at yourself. That's a very important path as a spiritual seeker, to make an effort to be spiritual. We love copy-pasting wisdom phrases. We love copy-pasting from our memory. The world is a temple. Well, why do you still treat it as a garage to pack up shit? Be humble enough to come into a place like this, and we'll declare it officially as a temple for the day of the seminar, and use it in this sense as a tool to know what is sacred, to know when to bow. Okay? And if you have your altar in your living room in front of everything, and you just go by your altar very fast, completely discarding what is sacred in your attention, you still don't understand this. Put your altar in a place where you'll not be treating it as decoration. Or, each time you go in front of your altar and you appear not to be conscious, you have this sense, I just went by God. You can just have the thought, Nama, just something. You don't have to start and bow down each time. It needs to be functional in your living room. But you chose to put it at a certain place. You can't use this as a way to train your ego. It doesn't matter. Huh? And as my guru explained so wisely, if you never want to lack respect for your altar, make it very easy to move, put it under your bed, and take it out only when it'll be in a sense of the sacred arts of contemplation of God. And then move it under your bed, and as my guru said, which allowed me to remember that teaching, God won't mind the under movement of your copulation. I like that joke. I laughed it about 100 times. What is sacred? It's so easy to just pull that automatic response, everything. But you don't know that. You just remember, cut and paste the Guru's words when he told you. What is sacred? Whatever you consider sacred, have the sacred attitude. Some of you have seen me bow in front of my altar, and you know what it means for me to bow in front of the altar. I can do that only once in a few years. So sacred and rare it is. And some of you remember that. Train yourself. Okay? in what is sacred with the tools that we use as symbols. And if something happens to the symbol, don't go into the drama. It's not the real thing. It's a symbol. Okay? Because your ego will use the wisdom of using tools to train you in the sense of sacredness in a way to make you feel guilty of not already being there. Because we just talked about it. Okay? Find a balance where you don't know where to stand, where you don't know what's the good way to act. That is where you should be. Once you don't know anymore the real way to handle all that stuff, and you have no more choice to rely on fate. Because there's no rule to tell you how you should act once you go in a temple, once you go back in the world, if you consider everything sacred, you bow to everything. The confusion. Go to the place where you don't know anymore how to act, and know, through experience, everything in a state of sacredness. Everything is a wonder of divinity. Once you have that experience, you can behave that way and dismantle the altar. Once every time you go in front of your altar, you just see yourself sitting there as a symbol, and as the representation, and as the full accomplishment of it, and as the emptiness of the shell. Once you know yourself consciously, after a lot of times, when there's never an instant where you're still inspired by the altar, what you just know, the full extent of your divine experience, then you don't need that altar again. And I still have not come in front of a single person so far who could do this. There's one person I know who can do this, who is also an ascended being. Okay? But you will know sometimes in your 10th Bhumi experience, when you have trained your human so much, when you get to the point in the 8th Bhumi where you don't give a shit about your spirituality anymore, because every process you've done, every meditation you've done, every prayer you've done, you were motivated to acquire something. You remember that. You have been motivated. Oh, I so want to ascend. The arrogance we have. Bullshitters. You say you want to attain self-realization. You say you want to ascend. And you're arrogant enough to think you're doing it for yourself. I want to ascend. How could you possibly ascend in such a state of egocentrism? Because you think you're going to ascend for yourself. Ha! Nevertheless, greed. The true art of charity, the true art of even ascension, is when you don't even have the motivation, the personal goal to do it. Then it's the whole of the universe that does it as you in the localized fashion. That's ascension. There's no way to understand this beyond the latest Bhumi, but nonetheless, you got the wisdom there. Maybe it's going to inspire a few people. Before that wisdom, we say, you ascend by being in service to others. We build this as a rule. Why do we invent that rule if rules are not meant to exist? Because we don't have the wisdom to understand how could we be so arrogant to ascend for our egocentric self. And it makes no sense when you have this level of thinking and perception. So then you don't obey the rule anymore, be in service to others. You just don't understand that you ascend because everyone else does. At some point, other in time, okay, yes, of course, I understand that. You think you can master this experience with no sacred sense? No way. What is sacred? And you'll remember, a few of you, where is your passion? Read. You chose it heavy. We have to do it. Because we're in love. And I know from your perspective, sometimes we hate each other. It's okay. I accept that. Do you? Because you will not know what is sacred until you see me as your mentor show you. You are sacred. And if you can't do this on your own, I have to find a way for you to accept it, step by step. Some of you will remember when I teach you, I'll have you shovel shit first because you can't accept to be in charge of the entire system. I'll have you handle the haystacks, the horses. You know, there's a metaphor about the loving father who found expedient means to lead you step by step. The step now is what is sacred. Where's your motivation? Where's your passion? Now, motivation and passion is two completely opposite things that seems to be the same thing. Now, let me explain. 8 Bhumi again, the wisdom of 8 Bhumi. You have been motivated doing mantra and mala for so long because you had a goal to attain. And you get to go beyond the sense of motivation, 8 Bhumi. There's no more reason for you to do processes, meditation, prayer. You just want to sit as God. And as you do this, a challenge of 8 Bhumi is the extent of the abandonment, the remaining traces from the 7th Bhumi. You know, the torturing feeling, the most dramatic emotion you can feel is the abandonment at the end of your 7th Bhumi. And there's still traces of that uselessness of existence in the 8th Bhumi, where you just don't give a shit about anything. So you're not motivated to do your practices. That's because you have always required a motivation to do something. Your ego, as your saboteur, was also the only reason why you did your practices. It's an expedient means. It's a tool. Get to 8 Bhumi, you don't have motivations again. Now you need to start doing stuff regardless of your personal interests, preferences, if you like it or not, if you have a motivation. Does that answer your question? You will need passion for the day where motivation ends, when there's never a reason or personal interest to do anything. Because you don't give a shit. You don't care. Hey, Bhumi, great mistake. You sit, you do nothing. You go and exist as God, and because of that, you die and start over. Because you're not bringing God here. You're not going beyond. The solution is not to keep your motivations. Your motivations are ego, preference, stimulation, interest, comfort zone, all that. Passion is when you defeat the fundamental egocentrism that allow you to start existing. Thank you, God, for my egocentrism. And may your will be done for me to be freed from that power and master it. So that when you still do prayer, meditation, mantra, mala, when you don't give a shit about the result it will deliver, you will still be riding your car. If you stay at 8 Bhumi and stand still, you'll be sitting in your car, parked, going nowhere. I am the car, I am the driver, I am the essence of what it's made of. Om. And go nowhere. It's all kind of parking. Pretending to be a sacred parking when it's not in your perception. Fooling yourself. You're here to take charge, and to take charge is not to bring about the most pleasurable experience. Then you use this wisdom and you find a way not to experience that pleasure. No, go ahead and find pleasure in everything. Then you use this wisdom. You don't do stuff that doesn't bring pleasure. Where will I stand still? Go where you don't know what to do and beyond that ego reference. And it's going to be fun and joy. But if you don't do the practice, like Carlos was telling me, I so don't feel like doing mala anymore. Well, do mantra, do prayer, do something. And at one point, you'll again find useful the practice of mala, using an exterior tool, although you know it's empty and now makes no sense at your level of perception, and you still do use it because mechanically the natural machine works that way. You use a physical trinket to help densify more the wisdom that you're invoking, so it will affect the ego, so we use them all. Not for what it brings us, but for what it brings. For what it makes. It's a tool, use it. Put some gas in that car, turn the key, drive it. Use the car to go where you have to go, not to go where you always want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometime, you might get what you need. I love that song. Always get what you want. It's almost aggressive but filled with wisdom. Until you reach a true point of faith. And from that divine level, you always have what you want. You don't always have what your ego wishes to control. But as God, how could something happen out of the range of what you have desired divinely? And once you perceive from that point, everything you wish for, you manifest even in the flesh. Your ego will still feel he has no control, but you'll have it. Okay? Breathe. What is sacred? Where is your passion? Why are you doing that?